What's the one secret that completely changed your view of someone you love? Here's mine. Hi, I'm Jake, 29, and I've always thought of myself as a pretty laid-back, family-oriented guy. My mom would call me the peacemaker of the family, always the one smoothing over arguments, keeping the holidays drama-free, and generally avoiding conflict. But a few weeks ago, I stumbled across something that's left me questioning everything I thought I knew about my dad. I've been sitting on this, trying to make sense of it, but I just can't. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet because I honestly don't know what else to do. My dad, Paul, is 61 and basically a walking cliché of a Midwestern dad. He's the kind of guy who spends his Saturdays fixing up old cars, insists on wearing socks with sandals, and thinks dad jokes are a legitimate form of communication. Growing up, he was the epitome of stability. He worked the same factory job for 35 years, never missed a single school play or soccer game, and was always home for dinner. He's the kind of man you describe as solid, the foundation of our family. I've always admired him, and to be honest, I think I modeled a lot of my own personality after his. He's calm under pressure, fiercely loyal to the people he loves, and he has this way of making you feel safe, no matter what's going on. My mom, Rachel, is more of the firecracker, warm and loving, but also the type who'll tell you exactly what she's thinking, even if it stings a little. They've been married for 35 years, and as far as I could tell, their relationship was rock solid. And then there's me and my sister Katie. She's 32, married with 2 kids, and living a couple of states away. We're close, but not the kind of close where we talk every day. Life just gets busy, you know? Anyway, Katie's always been more like Mom, outspoken, a little impulsive. I'm the quieter one, the one who tends to see both sides of every argument. Or at least I used to. This whole thing started a few weeks ago when I was helping my parents clean out the attic. They're planning to downsize and move into a smaller house now that Dad's retired, and they asked me to come over and help sort through some old boxes. You know the drill, boxes full of baby clothes, school projects, photo albums. It was actually kind of fun at first, walking down memory lane with my parents and cracking jokes about my terrible middle school haircut. And then I found the box. It was one of those old, beat-up cardboard boxes shoved in the corner under a pile of Christmas decorations. When I opened it, I expected to find more random junk, maybe some old tools or books. But instead, I found this dusty old photo album and a stack of letters tied together with a piece of fraying red ribbon. At first, I thought it was something romantic, maybe old love letters my dad had written to my mom back when they were dating. But the more I read, the more confused I got. These weren't letters to my mom. They were addressed to someone named Ellen. The first letter I opened was dated from the early 90s, about 2 years before I was born. It was written in my dad's handwriting, there's no mistaking it, but the tone was completely different from how he talks to my mom. It was softer, almost poetic. He wrote about how much he missed her, how he thought about her every day, how he wished things could be different. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to make sense of it. My dad? Writing love letters to someone who wasn't my mom? It felt like I just stepped into an alternate reality. I ended up skimming through a few more letters, and here's where it gets really weird. Ellen wasn't just some random fling. She was the mother of a child my dad referred to as his. I think my hands were shaking when I read those words. My dad has a whole other kid out there, a kid who would have been born before I was even a thought in his mind. It was like my entire world tilted sideways. I didn't say anything to my parents that day. I just finished up the attic cleanup, went home, and sat on my couch, staring at nothing for hours. I kept replaying all these moments from my childhood, trying to reconcile the dad I thought I knew with the man who wrote those letters. A few days later, I called my sister Katie and told her what I found. Her reaction was exactly what I expected: shock, disbelief, and then anger. She immediately wanted to confront Dad, but I convinced her to hold off until we had more information. I didn't want to blow up our family without understanding the full story. So last weekend, I finally sat down with my dad. I was nervous as hell, but I couldn't keep this bottled up anymore. I asked him point blank, "Who is Ellen, and why do you have letters to her in the attic?" At first, he tried to deny everything, but when I told him about the letters, his face just crumpled. I've never seen my dad look so defeated. He admitted that Ellen was someone he'd been in love with before he met my mom. They'd had a relationship, and yes, she had his child, a boy. But they broke up before the baby was born, and for reasons he didn't explain, he never had any contact with his son. When I asked him if Mom knew, he hesitated for a long time before saying, yes, she knows. So now I'm stuck in this weird limbo. Part of me wants to dig deeper, find this half-brother I never knew I had, and try to understand what really happened. But another part of me is terrified of what I might uncover. My dad swears he's told me everything, but after this, how can I trust him? And then there's my mom. If she's known all these years, why didn't she ever tell us? I feel like I'm walking around with this massive secret, and it's eating me up inside. My relationship with my dad feels different now. Like there's this invisible wall between us that wasn't there before. And Katie's already talking about hiring a private investigator to track down our half-brother, which feels like a whole other can of worms. So, Reddit, what would you do in my shoes? Do I dig deeper, or let sleeping dogs lie? Am I overreacting, or is it fair to feel like my entire perception of my family has been turned upside down? Update. Things didn't go how I hoped. Hey Reddit. It's been a couple of weeks since I first posted, and I wish I could say things got better or even made more sense, but they haven't. I've been trying to process everything, but instead of answers, I've just ended up with more questions and more regrets. Here's what happened. After sitting on this for days, I finally worked up the courage to talk to my mom. I figured if anyone could give me the full story, it'd be her. I waited until Dad wasn't around, he was out running errands, and sat her down at the kitchen table. Mom, I said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She looked at me like she already knew where this was going. I didn't even have to say the name Ellen before her face fell. For a second, she didn't say anything, just sat there fiddling with her wedding ring. Finally, she sighed and said, I was hoping you'd never find out. Turns out, she's known about Ellen and the child for over 30 years. She found out about the letters a few months after she and Dad got married. At the time, Dad had no intention of hiding it from her. He told her about Ellen and the baby, swore it was all in the past, and promised he was fully committed to starting a life with her. Mom said she believed him because she loved him and wanted to build a future together. But here's the kicker. She told me that Dad did try to be a part of his son's life in the beginning. He reached out to Ellen after the baby was born, but she shut him down completely. According to Mom, Ellen told Dad she didn't want him involved, that she'd moved on and wanted to raise the baby on her own. Dad respected her wishes, or at least that's what he told my mom, and they left it at that. When I asked why she didn't tell me or Katie, Mom just shook her head and said, what good would it have done? It's not like he's been a part of your lives. I didn't see the point in dragging up old wounds. Katie, on the other hand, wasn't ready to let sleeping dogs lie. She was convinced there was more to the story, and to be honest, I started to feel the same way. Something about the whole Ellen didn't want him involved explanation didn't sit right with me. It felt too convenient. So Katie did what Katie always does. She went full steam ahead. She hired a private investigator to track down our half-brother. I told her it was a bad idea, that she was poking a hornet's nest, but she didn't care. She said we had a right to know the truth, whether Dad liked it or not. It didn't take long for the investigator to find him. His name is Ryan. He's 34, and he lives about 2 hours away. Katie was over the moon when she got the news, but I couldn't shake this gnawing sense of dread. What if he didn't want to hear from us? What if this just made everything worse? Katie insisted on reaching out to Ryan herself. She sent him a message on Facebook explaining who we were and why we were contacting him. To my surprise, he responded almost immediately. He said he'd always known about Dad, but he'd never tried to reach out because he assumed Dad didn't want anything to do with him. Hearing that felt like a punch to the gut. All this time, Dad had been telling us that Ellen didn't want him involved, but according to Ryan, it was the other way around. He said his mom told him she gave Dad the chance to be involved, but he never followed through. He never called, never visited, never even sent a birthday card. Ryan agreed to meet us, though, and last weekend, Katie and I drove out to see him. He seemed nice enough, polite but guarded. He said he wasn't looking to build a relationship with us, but he was curious about our side of the story. We talked for a couple of hours, and by the end of it, I couldn't help but feel like he'd been the one who got the rawest deal in all of this. He grew up without a father, thinking he wasn't wanted, while we had the privilege of a stable, loving home. After meeting Ryan, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I confronted Dad one last time. I told him what Ryan said, how he'd grown up thinking his father had abandoned him. Dad just sat there staring at the floor, and when he finally spoke, all he said was, "I did what I thought was best. I lost it." I told him that wasn't good enough, that he owed Ryan more than that. I asked him why he never tried harder, why he didn't fight to be in his son's life. And you know what he said? "I was scared. Scared I'd ruin everything with your mom. Scared I wouldn't be a good father to him. I thought walking away was the right thing to do, but maybe I was just being a coward." Hearing that broke something in me. For the first time in my life, I looked at my dad and didn't see the rock I'd always leaned on. I saw a man who made a selfish choice and spent the rest of his life pretending it didn't matter. Katie's still trying to keep in touch with Ryan, but he's been distant. I think meeting us stirred up a lot of emotions he wasn't ready to deal with, and I don't blame him. As for me, I haven't been back to my parents' house since that conversation with Dad. I still talk to Mom occasionally, but it's strained. She keeps telling me I need to forgive Dad, but I don't know if I can. The worst part is, I don't even know what I'm mad about anymore. Am I angry at Dad for walking away from Ryan? For lying to us? For not being the man I thought he was? Or am I just hurt because I finally realized my parents aren't the perfect people I made them out to be? I don't know if I'll ever get answers to those questions. All I know is that things will never go back to the way they were. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I wish I had a happier ending to share, but life doesn't always work out that way. If nothing else, I guess I've learned that even the people you think you know best can still surprise you, and not always in a good way.